स्वराज्य साम्राज्य विभूतिरेषा भवत्कृपा श्रीमहिम प्रसादात् प्राप्ता मया श्रीगुरवे महात्मने नमो नमस्तेस्तु पुनर्नमोस्तु नमो नमस्तेस्तु पुनर्नमोस्तु नमो नमस्तेस्तु पुनर्नमोस्तु नमस्तस्मै सदैकस्मै कस्मै चिन्महसे नमः यदेतद्विश्वरूपेण राजते गुरुराजते यदेतद्विश्वरूपेण राजते गुरुराजते। हरि ओम तत्सत्। जय गुरु, जय गुरु। I am very happy that our people, particularly the Indian Yoga Association, they are taking the trouble and making the effort to propagate the knowledge which is not only our treasure but the treasure of the whole humanity. And it is an ancient knowledge, prehistoric knowledge, because history goes only a few thousand years back. And most of this, our spiritual culture, it has developed in prehistoric times. Particularly on the occasion of International Yoga Day, arranging such a program for about 2 weeks, it is something I consider to be very great, because through this the salvation for the whole humanity is ensured. Particularly in this era when everywhere there is so much of distractive forces, so much of, I call it, centrifugal forces, that is throwing us out of the center, out of our core identity, out of our real, peaceful, eternal, immortal soul. This kind of effort is what is needed in the world. They create the opposite force, which we say centripetal force, that is bringing us to our center, back to our center. We can do our sadhana individually, but when it is taken up by some institution like this and they take some effort to propagate over the whole world, then certainly it becomes a center which generates the centripetal force in the society. In our case, by our sadhana, our pursuit, by our studying the scriptures, by our yoga practices, we can centralize our mind, we can converge our mind. But to have a societal effect where people do not know about this and to integrate them, this becomes a center of centripetal force generation in the society, which is extremely great. I will call it more than the personal effort. But the fact is that unless we have the personal sadhana of centralizing our own mind, we will not be able to generate this force in the society. So the individual sadhana is primary. But very soon we should be careful that we should not neglect the societal dimension of it and try to generate the centripetal force in the whole society. So that way all spiritual institutions, yoga institutions, they are playing a great role for the entire mankind. And there lies the real salvation of mankind. That is how the Indian civilization has lived for an unknown period of time, Otherwise, just the selfishness of people, greed of people, the whole civilization would have got perished. It is all there. Selfishness is there, corruption is there, all kinds of miscreants are there. But still, the force we have generated from eternity and which we are still generating, that keeps the society under check and balance. And the more we can generate this force, more will be the benefit for the entire mankind. So I am very happy, and I express my appreciation for the volunteers who have arranged these courses. Now I thought whatever I had discussed with Sri Harilal and Sudhakaran, more or less I understood. I have to speak on the ultimate yoga in Patanjali Sutras. That is, Patanjali Sutras everybody knows about, but it can be interpreted in various ways depending on our status, our spiritual sadhana. But it can equally be taken to a height where it speaks about the Vedantic sadhana fully. So we would like to see that the meaning of yoga and where it attains its ultimate level. The word yoga basically means union or fusion. Yoga means combining. That means union or fusion. Now when we say union, it is assumed that there are two which are united. But as we know from yoga sadhana as well as Vedanta, that finally, in truth, it is only one, and it is transcendental, not even one. Because when we say one, there is a concept of two and many. So the ultimate reality is one, so there is no question of two getting unified. So it is better to call it fusion, because of course there also we will mean two, or dissolution of one. But yoga itself, it means two, the union and fusion of two. So what happens is that by our ignorance we are dividing the one, the non-dual truth, into two and many, and thinking of many. When by practice of yoga we attain the ultimate level of knowledge, we find that they all get fused into that transcendental truth. Even as we say vidya and avidya, that means the jnana and ajnana or ignorance, those divisions, that duality also will get merged and will take us to the ultimate transcendental reality. Generally, this yoga, this union or fusion, is thought of in 3-4 manners. I will speak about 3. That one is the fusion of the drashta and the drishya. Drashta means the seer. We can say whether it is seer or knower or doer, whatever. It is the fusion of the knower and the knowledge. It is the fusion of the seer and the seen. That is, normally I am the seer, I am seeing the world. The world is an object before me. I am seeing the world. We often forget when we say I am seeing the world, actually I am seeing my body-mind personality also a small speck in the world. My body-mind personality is also a product of the world. So when I say I am seeing the world, actually I mean I am seeing my individual body-mind personality also. So the seer is actually, apart from that, the seer is knowing the world, is seeing the world, knowing the world. But it takes us, when we actually try to find out then who is that seer, and we look within to find out who am I, who is that real seer who is illuminating the whole world, including my own body-mind personality, who is the seer of the world. When we actually go there, we discover that that I is not just something within this body, But in that I, that consciousness, that Atma, that soul, the whole world also appears to be. So the whole world becomes a manifestation of that I. That is how the seer and the seen gets fused. I will come into it through Yoga Sutras directly. The second one we say is that the fusion of the egoistic I into universal I. That means we have a very narrow idea about ourselves. That is why we suffer from selfishness. That is why we suffer from fear, greed, desires. All these things come because we don't know our real I. We think that I am small, encapsulated by this body-mind personality, all others are different. So some people we hate, some people we get attracted to, some certain things we like, certain things we dislike. All this behavior is coming from the smallness of our identity. So actually what we do is my body-mind personality being a part of nature, it is also functioning in nature, just like the trees are going, the sun is moving, the moon is going around the earth is moving around the sun. As everything in nature is happening, being part of nature, my body-mind personality is also doing whatever is possible for that individual. Speaking, eating, drinking, whatever is possible, it is going on doing. So we consider an ego behind that I am this, who is doing this, who is enjoying this, who is liking this, who is disliking this. This ego, when we look within, finally we discover that this ego is a fictitious ego. This is a wrongly construed ego. And through yoga, when we attain the yoga, when the ultimate is attained, we find that this egoistic I gets completely merged into the universal Atma or Brahman or consciousness, or you can say universal I. That small separated individual I no more is there. Initially I am trying to look for that I am looking within to discover who am I. But when we actually reach there, we find that it is not within the body-mind at all. That I is transcendental, in which the whole universe is appearing to be, including my own body-mind personality. So this is the ultimate yoga. Then the third way of expressing this yoga is, we call it the merger or identification of the Atma with the Paramatma, or the merger of the Atma with the Paramatma. Or we can say Atma becoming Brahman. It is not really becoming, it is so, but we come to know that Atma is not different from the Brahman. In our scriptural language, it is called, Vedantic language, it is called Brahmatmaikatva Bodha. Brahma Atma Ekatva Bodha. Initially the Atma is small and Brahman is the substratum of the whole universe. We think that we are small and Brahman is everywhere. When we discovered that the small I am thinking of is not different from the Brahman at all, it is called Brahman Atma Ekatva Bodha. This discovery, this feeling is called Brahmatmaikatva Bodha. We can say that these are the main. There will be so many other ways of presenting the yoga also, but this is the ultimate yoga. Now, whatever we pursue to attain the ultimate aim is also called that. That means whatever we pursue to attain this ultimate yoga is also called yoga. So what we generally know now in the world in the form of Hatha Yoga, say whatever asana, mudra, etc. we do, the pranayama, they are all on the path of this ultimate yoga. Even for knowledge also we say jnana. Initially we call it Atma Jnana. So we are studying about what is that Atma, what are we looking for, who am I, etc. As long as I am knowing about the Atma, knowing about the Brahman, it is different from me. It is like other knowledges. It is like an object before me, a concept before me. I am knowing this. So there is a difference. I am knowing who am I. That who am I or the Atma or the soul is a concept. Now until our concept of our real identity, a concept of our identity starts transforming, and finally we find that whatever we have studied about the Atma, the knowledge about the Atma, that knowledge is nothing but me alone. So the knowledge and knower also gets fused there. That is called the ultimate yoga. In Bhagavad Gita you find that everything is yoga. All the 18 chapters are expressed as yoga. How? Because any of these, whatever they have described in 18 chapters, any of the path can be taken to attain this ultimate yoga. It starts with Vishada yoga, which is extremely striking, not found anywhere easily. That is the Vishada of Arjuna, the grief of Arjuna, Krishna tackled in such a manner that the grief became a path to the yoga. So whatever is the path to attain this ultimate fusion of the small Atma with the universal Atma is also called yoga. Now, in dealing with this, we should remember that we often call our Yoga Sutras or Brahma Sutras or the whatever is written in the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, etc. We generally call them religion, philosophy. It is neither of them. We should understand that when people started investigating within, they were the inquirers of the ultimate truth. And when they found that this ultimate truth cannot be discovered, cannot be found in the external world, they understood that who am I looking at the world? Let me understand that first. And when they started on that inquiry, on that path, then slowly many things started revealing to them. So whatever revelations took place, our Shastras are a record of that. The Upanishads are the record of those revelations. So we can call them experimental scientists who instead of investigating into the objective world, they investigated into the subject, into the I. And in the process of experimentation, whatever they discovered, those are recorded in the Upanishads. So they are record of experimental discoveries of our subjective scientists. Just like the objective scientists, the Upanishads are record of the discoveries, experimental discoveries made by the subjective scientists. That we should remember very well. After the experimental discoveries have been made, to explain them to all and to give them a good structure of knowledge, etc., many theories are there. There are so many Vadas, Advaita Vada, Dvaita Vada, Dvaita Advaita Vada, then there are so many ramifications, anything can be there. Those are all theories. But the spiritual experimental discovery is not a theory, it is true for all, and it is irrespective of our religious identity, racial identity, national identity. If we are a human being having the same faculties, then this will be true of us. So anybody, anywhere in the world, anytime, can pursue this yoga. And that is how this has lived for thousands and thousands of years. How? Because in each era, so many people have done this experiment and confirmed that yes, it is so. Because of this repeated confirmation by experiment over the ages, this has become eternal knowledge treasure for us. This we should remember very well, because it is not properly interpreted even in scholarly circles also, I would say. It's all the record of the experimental knowledge which is true of anybody, anywhere in the world. And each person, each sadhaka doing the experiment, if he does it properly with full sincerity and whatever characteristics are needed, qualities are needed, he will be able to confirm that this is what the truth is. Now, like that, we hear of Patanjali Maharshi, who was also a great Maharshi. The Rishi means seer, who sees the truth directly. That is how the Rishi word has come. It is not they have concocted the truth or made a philosophy of the truth. They have seen the truth. That means it's a direct knowledge of the truth which they have recorded. And Maharshi means who has, as a Rishi, it is true, he is also an experimental scientist, but Maharshi has a greater dimension that goes beyond an individual discovery. He thinks of the society, he tries to keep something for the future societies to be benefited from. That is why Patanjali Maharshi has given in sutra form. It is easy to remember the sutras, by heart the sutras. So even if somebody like Bhaktiar Khilji or so, who destroyed all the international universities in Nalanda, Vikramashila and all, or the Hunas who destroyed the Takshashila University, the first international university in the world, they have destroyed. Even if they destroy also, some people will be there to remember the sutras and bring out the knowledge from there. So their thought process is very great. They thought, they understood that what they have discovered, it has got eternal value for the benefit of the mankind, for the upkeep of the mankind, for the sustenance of the society. And they should be kept in a manner so that it can withstand the usual destructive force of nature as well as human beings. Human beings are most destructive, much more than the animals. So they have destroyed. We hear that in Nalanda, the 9-storied library, it was burning for 3 months. And thousands of books have been completely burned. And about 2,000 teachers, 2,000 teachers and 10,000 students also were burnt alive. Whatever it is, there might be little exaggeration, we don't know. It could be underestimation also. But whatever it is, in spite of such destructive forces also, we have really not lost anything at all. The knowledge is still with us. Anybody can pursue it and have it, can verify it, reconfirm it. That is the greatness of our civilization, we must understand. Now in Patanjali Sutra, I will only touch upon the first 4. It is called Chatussutri. That is, the first 4 are very important. In a capsule, in a nutshell, they speak about the whole thing. The first sutra is called Atha Yoganushāsanam. Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Atha Yoganushāsanam. Now, Shasana means instruction, discipline, pursuit, which has been given by the teacher. That is, in our country, to preserve this knowledge, there had been a Guru Shishya Parampara, a lineage of Guru Shishya. Why? Because from the book, whatever we can get, it is only theoretical. So to have the real functional knowledge, experiential knowledge, we can get from a person who is living the knowledge. That means, suppose there is a fire. If you have a picture of the fire, with that you can know, this is how the fire looks like. But you cannot do anything with that fire. You cannot cook your food, you cannot burn the dead body, you can do nothing. You cannot have the warmth even. So like that, the knowledge, all this knowledge is about what? About ourselves. It is not the knowledge of the camera or the knowledge of the table or the knowledge of the microphone. It is the knowledge about ourselves. So until we live the knowledge, the power of the knowledge will not be known. When we live the knowledge, it becomes more and more powerful, and we understand the power of it. And more we live it, more sincerely, more wholesomely we live the knowledge, it blossoms in us fully, more and more fully. It becomes a real fire in us. So, this instruction is Anushāsanam, means following. The Shasana means instruction. Anushāsanam means following the instruction. Now, Atha Yoga, they are going to, Patanjali Maharshi is going to speak about yoga. But what is yoga? Yoga anushasanam, that following the instruction, following that instruction, we should be able to attain that yoga. So that is called the yoga anushasanam. Now what is this atha? This atha can be interpreted in 6 or even more ways also. I will take only one. Atha means the fitness of anybody who is taking to this pursuit. Deservingness or fitness or the qualities, it designates the qualities. That is, a person who is taking to these instructions should have a real earnestness, sincerity and love for this. Otherwise he will not be successful and he will say that it is all trash. So it is for the Guru to judge that the person I am instructing the knowledge, has he got Shraddha? This Shraddha we don't have in English. Shraddha means a full application, means we must value this as supreme, something of very great benefit. Then only we will develop sincerity, yearning for it, sincere yearning for it. So whether the person has enough of Shraddha to pursue this shasanam, that is the atha. Atha means it's meant for the people who are sincere, who have the sincere yearning for pursuing this sutras, whatever is instructed through the sutras. And in Vedanta you will find that this qualification of a disciple is extremely important. We can discuss and discuss and discuss for 100 lectures also, it will not be over. Now after that, in the second sutra itself, Maharshi is introducing the yoga. What is he saying? The second sutra is Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Nirodha means complete stoppage. Not complete stoppage, stoppage. Vilaya means complete dissolution. Nirodha means it is a temporary stoppage. He says that yoga is, he is defining the yoga as the stoppage of elimination of chitta vritti. Now here again I would like to say that let us not jump to conclusion immediately, but that is what has happened all over the world, particularly in our country. We should look into the third and fourth sutras also to understand what Maharshi has explained in this too. If it is only vritti nirodha, then can the yoga happen out of it? We have to think. First let us understand what is this vritti, chitta vritti. Now, the mind, you can think of the consciousness. The consciousness means which reveals everything. That means there are thoughts in the mind. It's not only outer things. Suppose inside the mind there are thoughts, there are emotions, there are various memories, concepts, etc. Who is illuminating them? Who is revealing them? So whatever thoughts are coming in the mind also, the consciousness is illumining them. Now think of a time when there is no thought at all. If you can make our mind thoughtless. Actually it is happening every day in deep sleep. We call it sushupti. We call it sushupti. That is the deep sleep when there is no thought at all. During swapna our body is not functioning but the mind is still active. In sushupti, body, mind, intelligence, nothing is active. Now, but getting up from sushupti, we come to know that I had not known anything. That means the no signal stage. It is not only sushupti, when we become unconscious or we are, because of some anesthesia also, we are having unconsciousness. Actually, it is not unconscious because coming out of it, we know that I did not know anything. That means that no signal state also was revealed by the consciousness. That we should know. Now, vritti means any thought, any vibration, any concept, any emotion, Even the small thought of I am, that is also a vritti. That is in the consciousness, as I am just now, I was explaining that in Sushupti or in Samadhi or in so-called unconsciousness, when there is no signal means there is no thought at all, no thought, no emotion at all. That is pure consciousness. In that, whenever there is a thought coming in, that is called the vritti. Now, how do I say it is pure consciousness? We don't come to know in Sushupti or unconsciousness, because at that time the buddhi, mind, everything is sleeping, they are not functional. But if you can generate a wakeful sleep, that is, the buddhi will not sleep, the mind will not sleep, the body also will not sleep, but all of them will be inactive, they will not move. The mind will not think, the buddhi will not have any effort, the body will not move at all. If we can generate that condition, then we can know what it is when there is no vritti. That is called samadhi. In samadhi, when vrittis are not there, in the absence of all the vrittis, the soul is revealed. What is that soul? That is the I, that is the consciousness. And from there, when we come out into the world, we discover that the whole world is nothing but they are vrittis in the consciousness. So actually the whole world, as we see, we are seeing as external, and part of it is my own individual personality also. But truly speaking, when they are appearing in my consciousness, we are knowing. In my mind, we are able to know them. So the world is actually, they are all vrittis in my consciousness, vrittis in my chit, in my consciousness, in the Atma. So this is the great revelation of Patanjali in the next two sutras. What is he saying? In the third sutra, he is saying, what is happening when there is no vritti? In the second, he said, Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha. He called it yoga, but actually how it is happening yoga, he has not explained here. Next one is, what is happening in yoga? Tada Drashtuh Swarupe Avasthanam. Tada Drashtuh Swarupe Avasthanam. Tada Drashtuhu. Drashtuhu is Shashti Vibhakti. Drashta means seer. Drashtu means of the seer. Tada means at that time. Tada Drashtuhu Swarupe Avasthanam. So when there is no vritti, he says that is the Swarupa, that is the essential, real, core identity of the Drashta, of the seer. See, when there is no thought, nothing, what will be there? And you are not sleeping, what will be there? It is only the revelatory power, the consciousness. So that is the seer, that is the real seer. That is why it is called the Swarupa. In the next sutra, he is further explaining then what happens in the other times when there is no vritti. No vritti means there is no world vision also. Because the world appearing means it is a vritti. It will be a vibration, a formation in the mind. So when there is no vritti means there is no world. When I am saying no world, don't make a mistake. When there is no world, your individuality also will not be there. Your individual personality also will not be known. Nothing is there. It is just the consciousness, the revealer, left alone, left in its own pristine form. This we should understand. So he says in the fourth sutra, he says, Vritti sarupyam mitaratra. Even if you spend your whole life on this, it will not be more. This fourth sutra, it has everything you wanted in life for a sadhaka. You have been looking for God everywhere, throughout your life, not finding Him anywhere. You are trying to do the vritti nirodhat maybe throughout your life, you have not been able to do. But what the Maharshi is expressing in this fourth sutra is something which cannot be overestimated any time at all. He says, in the other times when there is no vritti nirodha, vritti sarupyam itaratra. Itaha atra means other than this time. What is happening? It is vritti sarupyam. That means that drashta, we have known now the essential nature of the drashta as pure consciousness going into the vritti nirodha state, samadhi state. Now from there, when we are coming back to the active state, the whole world is appearing as vritti in my mind. In that case, Maharshi is pointing out that the whole, whatever world you are seeing, they are not different from you. The whole world is only the vritti. And whose is the vritti? All the vrittis are in your consciousness, in your mind. So, the God is what you are. You are the Atma, in which the whole universe is appearing to be. So, in the world, because we are segregating the world, that I am the seer, I am seeing the world, we are suffering from sukha, dukkha, selfishness, fear and whatnot, because everything is different from me. But when we understand that I, the drashta, has become the world, vritti sarupyam, the drashta itself has taken, himself has taken the form of the world, and it is absolutely true, even scientifically also it is absolutely true. You will not know anything of the world unless it appears in your mind. There are so many things you don't come to know because they don't appear in your mind. Whatever you have to know as the world, it has to appear in your mind. And what is that mind? Mind is only the functional state of your consciousness. And you are knowing the world vritti, that whole world with all its functionalities, including your own jnana, ajnana, sadhana and whatnot. Even the vritti nirodha state also. All these things are only vrittis in your consciousness, in the consciousness. And vritti of whom? Of you, yourself, the drashta, the consciousness. So there is nothing other than the consciousness, nothing other than the Atma. That is why we say that itself is the Brahman. When we realize this, then we call it Brahmatmaikatva Bodha. That Atma is that small, I think my soul is small, encapsulated by this body-mind personality. It is not small at all. It is the substratum of the entire universe. And I can miss everything of the world. Suppose I go away from here, I will miss the camera, I will miss the table, I may miss many other things. If I sleep, I will miss the wakeful world. If I am wakeful, I will miss the sleep. Everything in the creation, in the world, we can miss, but we can never miss God or the Atma or the Brahman, because that is what I am. And in that, the whole world is appearing to be. The world is always changeful. Something will be there, something will not be there. But where it is appearing, the drashta, it is the drashta's vritti. So in any of the vrittis, any of the perception, we cannot miss the drashta. That is our Patanjali Maharshi's great way of expression. It's a beautiful sutra. I cannot appreciate it enough, I would say. It's a beautiful sutra which brings God to your grasp. You cannot miss Atma or God or Brahman anywhere at all. Now, there we have to practice and realize it. This theoretically we can know, but we have to practice and know it. And for that also we don't have time. Patanjali Maharshi has given clear instructions, of which the 12th sutra is very important and is similar to Bhagavad Gita also. It says, Abhyasa vairagyabhyam tan nirodha. How do you attain this nirodha so that you know who am I? That part has to be known first. Then only you will know that it is his vritti. The whole world is his vritti. Otherwise you may know, but it will not become a realized, functional, actualized knowledge. So we have to first discover that I in us, the consciousness, the Atma, that one in the vritti nirodha state. And then Realize that the whole world is the vritti of that I alone. So to do that, he says the way for us is the Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam Tannirodha. That is Abhyasa and Vairagya. Abhyasa means practice, and Vairagya means viraga. We always unnecessarily get attached to something and we generate hatred towards something. So we are always seeing the world as colored with me and mine, others, etc. Colored with this I like, that I don't like. That means, in a nutshell, we colored the world with raga, dvesha. Raga and dvesha. Viraga means without raga, without dvesha. So as we practice to become free of this raga, dvesha, this clinging to what I like and hating what I dislike, that is the real practice we have to undergo to generate vairagya. That means, what is vairagya? Seeing things as they are, seeing myself what I am, everything, the vision becomes absolutely clear. That is called the vairagya. It's a sky-like dimension which will be felt inside. The moment, because always we are clinging to something, generating raga dvesha, we feel we are small. That sky-like feeling doesn't dawn inside. So when the vairagya is generated in our mind, we will have always a sky-like dimension. That is the Atma. The Atma is the parakashtha of vairagya. That means the supreme vairagya we can think of is the Atma itself. So the real paravairagya doesn't come without the vision of without the Atmic vision, without the Atma Sakshatkara. Other vairagya is effortful vairagya as we do. That is our practice of vairagya. But the real paravairagya, that also Patanjali Maharishi has explained very clearly in another sutra. That is when we have the Atma Sakshatkara, thereafter the vairagya dawns automatically and we have to pursue further. Abhyasa means anything we pursue, anything, any effortful pursuit is called abhyasa. Even the practice to become effortless, with Patanjali Patanjali Maharishi discusses, that is also an abhyasa. He says for dhyana yoga, the three things are important. What is that? Sukhasanam. That is, you sit comfortably so that you can completely forget your body. Then is prayatna shaithilya. That means effortlessness, loosening all your effortfulness. If you look into your mind, you will find that everywhere there is stress and tension. They have to be relaxed. They have to be relaxed. Otherwise, your smallness will not go. Your difficulties will not go. So, relaxing everything, becoming absolutely effortless. Often we meditate, I'm going to meditate. So, it is all the more effort and you are generating more stress. After the meditation, when you get up, you feel tired because you have fought throughout the meditation session. What you should do, Patanjali Maharishi is pointing out, is become absolutely effortless. Even, is it the Vitti Nirodha, is it not, or is it that, that kind of a buddhi effort also will not be there. You have to completely relax, effortless. And the method, the greatest, the highest and the most powerful method for that, Patanjali Maharishi has discussed in Sutra 23. Ishvara Pranidhanat Va. Ishvara Pranidhanat Va. That is, Pranidhana means Prakrishta Nidhana. That means complete refuge, complete surrender to the God. Or to the Atma, you can say, to the Brahman, you can say, whatever. The surrender is with you. To whom you are surrendering doesn't matter. By surrendering, what is a surrender? Real surrender, if it is there, 2-3 things you can think about. One is that complete relaxation. There won't be any stress, tension at all because you have surrendered. The second point will be you won't have any desire at all. You won't look for anything. You will not ask for anything. You will be absolutely contented always. So this surrender or Ishvara Pranidhana is the greatest abhyasa, or finally we know that it is not abhyasa, it's a knowledge. It becomes a knowledge. So that is the greatest sadhana we have. So as we pursue with the other yogas, the Hatha Yoga practices and all, we should always keep in mind the ultimate aim of yoga. Then we will be guided properly along the path. And the path itself will become so blissful, so fulfilling, that you will never miss anything. Whether you have attained the goal also, you will never think. Because the path itself is so fulfilling, so joyful, that you will remain throughout prasanna chitta. You will always remain contented. Prasanna chitta means cheerful disposition, placid mind. That you will never worry about, have I reached, have I not reached, that also will not be there. Because every step going towards the goal is so fulfilling that you will be blissful throughout. I shall stop today. Time is also over. Okay.